Hello, in this video we're going to be talking about life cycles based on sexual reproduction. So it's not wasting your time. Let's get right to it. Now, when we're talking life cycles of sexual reproduction or multicellular organisms, there's three main types that we're going to be looking at: diploid dominant, haploid dominant, alteration of generations. And between the first two, we'll be talking about diploid dominant, haploid dominant. What that refers to is that a majority of the time, the main organism is either in a diploid state or in a haploid state, based on reference of time. Okay, alteration of generations. It's a blending of the two. You get the two stages, which can be happening to actually be around at the same time, and in some cases, long periods of time. But another main aspect of this is that the haploid portion is out and away from the diploid portion. But we'll talk about all of that. All right, now when we're looking at diploid dominant life cycle, one of the things that we can point out first is that's us. Okay, we live most of our lives as a diploid organism. From the moment that fertilization occurs and the zygote is formed, that organism lives its entire life as a diploid dominant. And it's only for a few brief, I don't even know if seconds is the right word, when the fertilization process is just about to happen, that there's a haploid portion of concern, and then the fertilization occurs and we're right back to diploid with those reproductive sex cells, those haploid cells. And once the gametes are formed, there's obviously no multicellular haploid life stage. The gametes are just the one cells. So then fertilization occurs and we're right back to the diploid state. Now when we're looking at haploid dominant life cycle, fungi, algae, they're ones that participate in this, where the actual body of the organism is haploid, but the main function or the main cell that it's concerned about, the sporophyte, the spores, those are also are haploid. So it's all haploid, and there's a little bit of the diploid when the fertilization has occurred. But what you want to think about is this is outside of the organism. These are spores that have been made. And you've got the it's not male and female so much anymore, but it's as you can see that plus and minus. The spores come together to form that diploid zygote, and then once that happens, meiosis kicks in, and again the new organism starts making new spores. And although the haploid level like the parents, is like the parents, and you can see quotes or air quotes there, similar to, because it's a recombination of the parents. And in this case, the spores can be dormant for a long time. We know that fungi spores can just be in the soil and just waiting for the right conditions. And when those right conditions, as far as maybe moisture come along or material to digest, then it can become active, and then a bunch of rounds of mitosis to build that haploid structure. In this case, like in a fungi, it's not the mushroom that's necessarily the fungi. It's that white stringy stuff in the soil that if you break open a rotting log, out in the woods, you can see that as well. That's the fungi. All right, our third life cycle to look at is this alternation of generations, and this is all about the plants right here. And so you've got obviously a diploid plant, we'll say for a tree, and that tree will develop flowers, and then that flowers will have parts, have the male and female parts, and so where you got the pollen, you've got the anthera. Those would be considered the male and female parts, so those are haploid on a diploid body. And then of course, when that comes together, you can make that fruit, whether it's a gumball, as I mentioned earlier, whether it's a cherry, maybe it's corn, whatever. I mean, now you've got that diploid zygote. But the idea of another avenue to think about, you think of samaras that trees will make and lay on the ground. And again, but it's waiting for the right conditions in order to become active again. And not so much, as it says there, number 3, that the sex cells aren't gametes, but gametophytes. They'll turn into specialized cells. Meiosis is not directly involved because they're already haploid, so they don't need to be broken down anymore. So continuing thinking about alternation of generations. Once the zygote is formed, just like with us, okay, lots of rounds of mitosis to develop, and then eventually the sporophyte will be made to continue the next round of offspring. Well, that's our video over life cycles. And that also concludes our video lecture series. When we come back next time, let's see, I think we are animal structures. So we'll see you then.